This course is a companion to the book The Project Brain: Evolving Project Managers, available on Amazon. If you find today's session valuable, the book goes deeper on every framework you are about to learn, including the 3-tier document system, the janitor protocol, synthetic stakeholder simulations, and the full blueprint for an artificial intelligence-powered project management office you can run from your own desktop. You can find it by searching for The Project Brain by Self-Made PM on Amazon or by visiting selfmadepm.com. Now let us begin the course. 1. Welcome to this 2-hour professional development session on stakeholder engagement. Over the next 2 hours, we will work through the full discipline of identifying, analyzing, communicating with, and sustaining relationships with the people who decide whether your project succeeds or quietly dies. This course is eligible for 2 self-reported professional development units, abbreviated PDU, with the Project Management Institute, abbreviated PMI, under the online or digital media category. It maps to the Power Skills edge of the PMI talent triangle because stakeholder engagement is fundamentally a human skill expressed through disciplined process. Let us begin. 2. By the end of this session, you will be able to do 3 things. First, you will be able to conduct a rigorous stakeholder identification and analysis using a power and interest model, producing an engagement plan that is tailored to each quadrant. Second, you will be able to design a communication strategy that matches the format, frequency, and language to each stakeholder's actual preferences rather than your own default style. Third, you will be able to handle the 3 hardest stakeholder situations you will encounter in the field, which are difficult or hostile stakeholders, disengaged stakeholders, and sustained engagement across a long execution phase. 3. Here's how we will spend our 2 hours together. Part 1 frames why stakeholder engagement is the most leveraged soft skill in the profession. Part 2 walks through identification and analysis, including the power and interest grid and the cast a wide net discipline. Part 3 covers communication strategies by stakeholder type, including the communication matrix. Part 4 covers trust and expectation management, the 2 currencies that underlie every relationship. Part 5 addresses difficult stakeholders, disengaged stakeholders, and sustaining engagement through the long middle of execution. At the end, I will walk you through exactly how to claim your PDUs. 4. Every project lives inside a web of human relationships. Sponsors control funding. End users define whether the deliverable is adopted. Technical leads decide what is feasible. Regulatory and compliance bodies impose constraints you cannot negotiate away. Each of these groups has a different definition of success, and you are the person whose job is to align them. If you cannot do that, no framework, certification, or tool will save your project. 5. The most common failure mode in stakeholder engagement is treating it as a one-time activity. You identify a list during planning, publish a stakeholder register, send monthly status reports, and assume you have done your duty. Then, in month 4, the project runs into a wall you did not see coming because a stakeholder you never actively engaged made a decision that cut your project off at the knees. Engagement is not an artifact, it is a continuous practice. The register is a snapshot, not a substitute for the conversations, the check-ins, and the political reading that the snapshot represents. Project managers who understand this distinction spend roughly a third of their week on deliberate stakeholder activity. Those who do not spend that time up front spend it later in damage control, which is always more expensive. 6. Strong engagement determines three things that no tool can compensate for. It determines how fast decisions happen, because stakeholders who trust you respond quickly, and stakeholders who do not delay out of caution. It determines what resources your project gets, because sponsors advocate for projects whose managers have kept them well informed. And it determines whether the final deliverable is embraced or rejected, because the people who feel heard during the work are the same people who will defend the outcome. These three levers, decision speed, resource flow, and adoption, are the real output of engagement work. Everything else in this course is in service of those three. Number 7. Before you can engage anyone, you have to know who is actually in the game. This sounds obvious and is routinely done badly. Most identification exercises produce a list of the obvious names: the sponsor, the project team, the immediate user group, and miss the stakeholders who will actually decide the project's fate. Those missed stakeholders are what we call latent influencers, and they are the single largest source of late-stage project surprises. 8. Real identification starts with multiple lenses on the same problem. Walk the organizational chart upward and sideways from your sponsor. Interview your sponsor explicitly about the political dynamics around the project. Who opposes it, who is quietly supportive, and whose portfolio overlaps with yours. Ask your team members who they depend on for information, approvals, and handoffs, because those dependency relationships are stakeholder relationships. Look at who was involved in similar past projects at the company and ask whether they have opinions about this one. Pay attention to the administrative assistants and executive coordinators who control calendars, because access is power. A good identification exercise produces a list that feels slightly uncomfortable, with 20 or 30 names where you expected 8. That discomfort is a sign you have done the work. 9. Every project has at least one hidden opponent. This is a person whose interests are harmed by the project's success, who has not been invited into the planning conversations, and who has not yet surfaced their objections. Examples are everywhere. A department head whose team loses headcount if your automation succeeds. A peer project manager whose budget shrinks if yours expands. A senior engineer whose expertise is replaced by the platform you are building. If you do not find this person during identification, they will find you in a steering committee 6 months in, with an objection that is loud, public, and expensive to resolve. Your job is to identify them now, understand their concern, and bring them into the conversation on terms you control. 10. Once you have the list, you analyze it. The classic tool is the power and interest grid, a 2x2 matrix where power is the vertical axis and interest is the horizontal. High power, high interest is the top right quadrant, and these stakeholders get close management with regular individual contact. High power, low interest is the top left, and these stakeholders need periodic satisfaction, meaning you keep them comfortable without consuming their time unnecessarily. Low power, high interest is the bottom right, and these stakeholders should be kept well informed because they will amplify your message inside their own networks. Low power, low interest is the bottom left, and these stakeholders require minimal effort, usually a place on the distribution list for major updates. The grid is not a static artifact. People migrate across it as the project progresses, and you should reevaluate the grid at least quarterly and always after any leadership change. 11. The grid tells you how much attention to spend. It does not tell you what to say. For that, you need a layer underneath, which is the motivation of each stakeholder. What does this person actually want from this project, and what do they fear losing? A sponsor's motivation may be a promotion tied to a strategic initiative. A department head's motivation may be protecting their team's relevance. An end user group's motivation may be a workflow that is finally bearable. If you can name the motivation and the fear for each high attention stakeholder in one sentence, you have done real analysis. If you cannot, the register is just a list. 12. One-size-fits-all communication is the fastest way to lose stakeholder engagement. The same facts about your project need to be packaged differently for an executive, a technical lead, and an end-user group. The content may be identical. The framing, the length, and the vocabulary must not be. 13. Build a simple communication matrix with one row per stakeholder or stakeholder group and 4 columns. The first column is preferred format, such as written memo, live meeting, dashboard, or a 5-minute hallway conversation. The second column is frequency, such as weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. The third column is channel, such as email, a specific chat platform, or an in-person one-on-one. The fourth column is content focus, which is the 1 or 2 things this stakeholder cares about most. Keep this matrix as a live document. Update it when you learn something new about a stakeholder's preferences. After 3 months of disciplined use, the matrix becomes the most valuable single artifact in your project. 14. Executives respond to business value, financial exposure, and risk. Technical stakeholders respond to architecture, feasibility, and dependencies. End users respond to impact on their daily work and the benefits they will see. When you write the same status with 3 different framings, you are not being redundant. You are doing translation work that most project managers skip and then wonder why their audience is disengaged. The rule of thumb is that the further the stakeholder is from the day-to-day of the project, the more you strip jargon and lead with the so what. A senior executive should be able to read your 2-paragraph summary and know exactly whether to worry. 15. A common failure mode is assuming your preferred communication style is universal. You may love written reports. Your sponsor may never read them and would absorb the same information in 5 minutes of hallway conversation. You may prefer formal meetings. Your technical lead may get more from an asynchronous comment on a document. The discipline is to ask each important stakeholder directly how they prefer to be updated, and then to respect that preference even when it is inconvenient for you. Engagement is the stakeholder's experience, not yours. Meeting them where they are is not soft or indulgent. It is the most efficient use of communication effort you can make. 16. Trust is the currency of stakeholder relationships. Everything you do either deposits into the trust account or withdraws from it. The discipline of engagement is understanding which behaviors are deposits and which are withdrawals, and running a positive balance at all times. 17. The single largest trust-building behavior is also the simplest. Do what you said you would do. If you promised a status update by Friday, deliver it by Friday. If you committed to investigating an issue, report back even if the answer is incomplete. If you committed to a decision by the end of the week, either make it or explicitly renegotiate the date before the week ends. Small commitments kept consistently build more trust than large commitments kept occasionally. And small commitments broken consistently destroy trust faster than any single large failure. 18. Transparency is the second trust lever. Share bad news early and share it directly. Stakeholders who hear about problems from you first, with a plan attached, conclude that you are in control. Stakeholders who discover problems on their own conclude that you are either hiding information or unaware of reality. Both conclusions are fatal to trust, and once lost, trust is expensive to rebuild. The mental rule to follow is that you are the first person your sponsor should learn any bad news from, about any part of your project, every time. If a sponsor ever learns about a problem on your project from someone else first, treat that as a serious failure and repair it in your next conversation. 19. Expectation management is not about lowering the bar. It is about ensuring every stakeholder has a realistic understanding of what the project will deliver, when, and at what cost. Most dissatisfaction on projects that actually deliver on plan comes from misaligned expectations, not missed commitments. Set expectations explicitly at kickoff by walking stakeholders through the scope, the timeline, and the constraints. Reinforce those expectations at every major communication touchpoint. When circumstances change, update expectations immediately. The conversation we have slipped 2 weeks because of a vendor issue, and here is our recovery plan, is always less painful than the conversation we missed the date because of a vendor issue we have been aware of for 6 weeks. 20. Abstract expectations drift. Concrete expectations hold. Use visual tools such as roadmaps, milestone charts, and dependency diagrams to make what you have committed to tangible and shared. When a stakeholder requests a scope addition, pointing to the roadmap and asking which of these items should move to accommodate your request makes the trade-off immediate and visual. They are no longer arguing with you. They are arguing with a picture, which is far easier for everyone. 21. Every project encounters stakeholders who are hostile, stakeholders who are disengaged, and a long execution phase where attention fades. These 3 situations separate the project managers who know the theory from the ones who can actually practice the craft. 22. A hostile stakeholder is almost always protecting something they value: their team's workload, their budget, their political standing, their comfort with the current way things work. The instinct is to defend your project against their objection, which escalates the hostility. The better move is to get curious. What exactly are they protecting, and can your project accommodate that concern without abandoning its goals? A stakeholder who opposes your automation project because it threatens their team's relevance may become an ally if you publicly position their team as essential to the rollout, the training, or the ongoing governance. The reframe is not manipulation. It is finding genuine overlap between their interests and yours, which nearly always exists if you look hard enough. 23. Disengaged stakeholders are not hostile. They are overwhelmed, or they do not see the project as relevant to their priorities, or they have been burned by prior projects that consume their time without delivering. The fix is to make engagement cheap for them and high signal. Short, focused interactions with a clear ask produce better results than long meetings with vague agendas. A 5-minute video, a 1-page decision memo, or a single, well-framed question gets answered. A 30-minute meeting without a stated decision gets ignored. If getting sign-offs takes longer than the actual work, the root cause is almost always disengaged stakeholders who have not been given a compelling reason to prioritize your project. 24. Sometimes a stakeholder will not engage, will not decide, or will not honor their commitments. Escalation becomes necessary. Done badly, escalation burns the relationship. Done well, it preserves it. The principle is to escalate with data, not emotion, and to warn the stakeholder before you do it. A clean escalation sounds like this: I need a decision on this by Thursday, and if I cannot get it from you by then, I am going to have to take the question to our sponsor with the context I have. That sentence is not a threat. It is a professional reset. Most stakeholders respond to it by actually making the decision, and the relationship improves rather than deteriorates. 25. Stakeholder attention follows a natural energy curve. Interest is high at initiation, high at delivery, and low through the long middle of execution, where the real work happens. Your job is to combat the fade. Create deliberate engagement moments throughout execution. Milestone celebrations, even small ones. Demo sessions of working increments, even unpolished ones. Feedback opportunities that make stakeholders feel their input is shaping the work. Decision points that require active participation rather than passive review. Rotate your tactics so engagement does not become routine. If you have been sending written reports for 2 months, replace one with a 15-minute live walkthrough. If meetings have become rote, replace one with a working session where a real decision is made. Novelty recaptures attention and signals the project is still alive. 26. Distributed teams and distributed stakeholders add another layer. Without ambient in-person cues, your engagement signals must be deliberate and redundant. Default to asynchronous written communication for anything that does not require real-time discussion. Protect the small window of overlap hours for the conversations that genuinely need voices in the same room. Record decision-making meetings so stakeholders who could not attend can catch up without losing context. And invest more, not less, in one-on-one time with critical stakeholders. Because the informal relationship building that used to happen over coffee now has to be scheduled deliberately. 27. We covered a lot. You can now identify the full set of stakeholders around a project, including the latent influencers most exercises miss, and analyze them using a power and interest grid layered with motivations and fears. You can design a communication matrix that matches format, frequency, channel, and language to each audience, rather than defaulting to your own preferred style. You can build trust by doing what you said you would do, delivering bad news early with a plan attached, and managing expectations as a continuous discipline anchored to visual artifacts. And you can handle the 3 hardest situations in stakeholder engagement, which are hostile stakeholders who need their underlying interest reframed, disengaged stakeholders who need engagement made cheap and high signal, and the long execution phase that demands deliberate moments of renewed attention. Your next step is to pick one active project, redo your stakeholder register this week using these methods, and build a real communication matrix before your next reporting cycle. 28. To claim your 2 professional development units, log into your PMI dashboard at the Continuing Certification Requirements System, which is abbreviated CCRS. Select Report Professional Development Units. Choose the category labeled Online or Digital Media. Enter the course title exactly as shown on your certificate, which is Professional Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. Enter the date you completed the course. Enter the provider name as Self-Made PM. Enter the Professional Development Unit value of 2, allocated to the Power Skills area of the Talent Triangle. Retain your certificate of completion in case of an audit. Self-Made PM is not a Project Management Institute authorized training partner, and professional development units on this platform are self-reported. Thank you for spending these 2 hours with me. I will see you in the next course. 29. Thank you for completing this course. If the ideas in this session spark something for you, the next step is the book. The Project Brain, Evolving Project Managers, is available now on Amazon and goes far beyond what we could cover in this session. It contains the complete system for building, maintaining, and scaling an artificial intelligence-powered project management office, the full janitor protocol with templates, deeper stakeholder simulation patterns, and real-world case studies from practitioners who have saved 10 to 15 hours per week using these methods. You can find more free courses, tools, and articles at selfmadepm.com. Again, thank you for your time, and remember to log your professional development units. I will see you in the next course.